When the 98K was aimed at him, the man suddenly stopped walking and ran away. Damn, I don't want to act anymore. Even when the out-of-control car rushed towards him, he stood still. After calculating the time in his head, he immediately bowed. He is a magician, but more like an old-school magician, because the entire performance is based on prediction. He predicted that the woman's rope would fall after 3 seconds. The woman didn't believe it, so he immediately started counting down. Cris Johnson possesses the ability to see the future for 2 minutes. Based on that ability, his life is extremely free and comfortable. He's never been short of money. Every time he's short on money, he just needs to go to the slot machine and press one button to get a big prize. Although he always wins in gambling, Cris never bets too big, because he understood the principle that tall trees catch the wind and are easy to cut down. Wool should only be plucked slowly to last long, so Cris always knows when to stop and lives modestly. Even though he was as careful as possible, he was still unlucky enough to stand out, still attracting the casino manager's attention. The manager and his subordinates discussed it very intensely, but still couldn't find out what cheating tricks Cris used. Even at that moment, Cris seemed to feel eyes watching and suddenly looked straight at the camera. "Look, he seems to be looking at us." Just like that, he heard what I said. "What table number is he sitting at?" "Table number 27. The casino manager decided to show no mercy and ordered his subordinates to detain him first and think later. But Cris soon predicted his situation. He just calmly extinguished his cigarette, then stood up and went to the chip exchange counter to prepare to leave. But at that moment, a robber suddenly appeared. Without saying a word, he immediately pulled out his gun. Cris woke up from the scene he had just predicted, and as soon as the robber appeared, he immediately took action to restrain him. But the security guard who came over thought he was the one causing trouble. Knowing that it was impossible to explain clearly, Cris turned and ran. Casino management immediately ordered blockade of all exits, but Cris, who can see 2 minutes into the future, had already planned his escape. First, he bowed his head and pretended to blow his nose and sneaked past the first guard. Then he came around the corner, pretended to light a cigarette, and bent down to tie a thick rope, escaping from the eyes of the second guard. He stood leaning against the slot machine and took a deep breath, unintentionally avoiding the second person's gaze. In the middle of nowhere, the head of the surveillance department saw that scene, causing him to go crazy. "He's there, right behind you guys, left, back to the corner. He is among you guys." As for Cris, he leisurely walked into the bathroom, took off his shirt and threw it in the trash, then leaned against the wall with one hand and waited. He took an old man's hat and walked out of the bathroom. Immediately, he pretended to stand next to the vending machine, avoiding the last 2 guards who'd just arrived. Finally, Cris simply walked away from the bar and threw away his hat. Then he leisurely stepped into a waiting convertible, started the car, and drove without hesitation. The casino manager was angry when he saw that scene. He immediately wrote down the license plate number and reported it to the police. The police also responded extremely quickly. Soon, 2 police cars were chasing behind Chris's car in non-stop pursuit. Although his driving skills were excellent, he still couldn't shake them off. The 2 police cars stuck like glue, causing Cris to be distracted and not paying attention to the road situation. As a result, a car accident occurred. Luckily, that was just the scene he predicted. It seemed that running at 80 kilometers per hour made it impossible to avoid a collision with a train, so Cris immediately stepped on the gas pedal and accelerated to more than 120 kilometers per hour, just in time to avoid a terrible collision. Cris finally escaped pursuit. He returned to his temporary accommodation. That place was a close friend's house, Irv, one of the few people who knew about his ability to predict the future. Even though Irv was the same as always, repeating his advice to Cris, try not to use your prediction power too much to avoid trouble. But Cris understood that even if you don't actively cause trouble, trouble will still find you. For example, this uninvited guest. "I'm an FBI agent. Next time you want to steal a car, choose one that doesn't have an anti-theft positioning system." But Cris was still very calm because he had predicted her appearance. It's just that he didn't quite understand why his antics made the FBI pay attention. Callie also didn't beat around the bush. She said directly that she had noticed Chris's specialness a few months ago while watching him perform magic. At first, she wasn't sure until she reviewed the surveillance cameras and saw how Cris took advantage of a series of coincidences to escape casino security. She completely confirmed her guess. "I want you to see the future. Tell me where that nuclear bomb is being placed. The lives of millions of people are at risk. Maybe he is the one to stop the impending disaster." It turned out that not long ago, a nuclear bomb was brought into America by terrorists and secretly placed somewhere. Callie wanted to borrow Chris's ability to find the bomb's location, but Cris flatly refused the offer. For 2 reasons. First, you cannot make predictions about unrelated matters, and you can only see 2 minutes into the future. Second, as a child, he was once thought by the police to have mental problems and taken to the hospital for intervention. Therefore, he absolutely did not trust the police and did not want to help. But Callie seemed to have predicted that Cris would not cooperate. There have been police outside for a long time, surrounding this whole area. You're right, I should run. Fortunately, all that happened was just a scene Cris had foreseen. Because he already knew the outcome, this time he took advantage before Callie arrived. He quietly slipped out the back door, causing Callie to find no one when she arrived. He predicted it, right? But Cris, after getting rid of the trouble, did not escape at all. On the contrary, the next morning, he was at a restaurant. He kept looking at the clock with a tense expression as if waiting for someone. Since discovering he had the ability to see the future, Cris realized he could only predict things related to himself, and the time should not exceed 2 minutes. But there was one girl who broke that rule, because for more than 10 years she kept having the same dream over and over again, that one day, at 8:09 a.m., in a restaurant, she would meet her destiny. And today was that day. When the clock showed exactly 8:09, the girl in the dream walked into the restaurant, right on time. Looking at that strange yet familiar figure, Cris stared, completely stunned. He wanted to clarify why that girl for so many years always appeared in his dreams. He immediately stood up and approached to get acquainted. "Hello, do you mind if I sit with you?" "Actually, I don't mind." It seemed that the usual way of starting a conversation was not effective. Cris immediately switched to friendly tactics. "Sorry to bother you. I have some questions about coffee."
Looks like the coffee beans they use. You should have asked the waiter that question, right? Yes, the trick of using a pretext to start a conversation. "Excuse me, do you have a lighter?" "I don't smoke." He kept trying all kinds of ways to get to know her, but failed. Cris immediately fell into a state of confusion. But at that moment, a man wearing a suit appeared, causing the situation to take an unexpected turn. The conversation between the two seemed quite tense. Even after that, the man started to get physical. Cris realized the opportunity had come and immediately stood up to stop the other guy's rude behavior. "Who are you?" "I am her future." Cris, with the ability to see the future, of course already knew all of the opponent's actions in advance. He easily tricked the man, then confidently introduced himself to the girl. Just when Cris thought that the hero's trick to save the beauty would work, he unexpectedly introduced his intentions so clearly. Combined with violent behavior, it made the girl feel offended. "You two just stay there and fight. You hurt me." Helpless, once it was like that, this time when faced with the next punch from the man wearing the suit, Cris chose to stubbornly endure the blow. Even though it was very painful, he still successfully won the girl's heart. Indeed, women are emotional creatures. Only suffering and humiliation is an eternally invincible trick. When the girl threatened to call the police, after sending his ex-lover away, Cris also took the opportunity to find out her name was Liz. While the first impression was still good, Cris immediately took the opportunity to climb into her car. But what surprised him was Liz drove thousands of miles to Arizona to work as a volunteer teacher at the Indian reservation. She came there twice a week to teach the children. She had even specially prepared a birthday gift for a child. Liz stood in the middle of the waterfall, surrounded by children, exuding an aura of warm motherly affection, beauty, kindness, and a fateful encounter. This immediately made Cris feel like he was truly in love. "I think he likes you." "Why do you think that?" "Because the way he looks at her is exactly the same as the way a guy looks at his girlfriend." Being discovered, Cris was not embarrassed at all. He walked straight in front of today's birthday boy and put on a small show for the boy to see. Hold it tightly and keep it like that. This is the moment to witness a miracle. It doesn't bite. Happy birthday. This charming side also made Liz's heart flutter. She gradually lowered her guard in her heart. Because of the pouring rain, the two ended up at a motel. There was only one empty room left. Faced with such a God-given opportunity, Cris did not take advantage of the situation. On the contrary, he was very gallant and proactive in making suggestions. "Go to the car and sleep overnight." "Hey, I had a dream yesterday. Today it came true again." "Know what it is?" "No. It's talking face to face with the person you like." "Sleep well." The night was long and noisy. The heart was restless. That night, Liz was so tired that she couldn't sleep. The next morning, Liz walked out of the bathroom wearing a towel. Cris immediately gave it to the beauty who had just finished bathing. In a small, fleeting moment, the fire that flared up made Liz's heart vibrate strongly. "You are so beautiful. It's unbelievable." "What do you mean?" "That's what I think." But right at the moment the two were immersed in love, the Federal Bureau of Investigation also tracked him down. They tracked Chris's movements through surveillance images. This time, to make sure there were no mistakes, Callie arranged a police force and special forces surrounded the motel. At the same time, Liz had just gone out to buy breakfast. She was stopped and put in the car, where Chris's true identity was revealed. In the car, Callie described Cris as paranoid and antisocial. His identity as a federal investigator, combined with a video showing Cris pulling out a gun in the casino, caused Liz to start moving. The black police officer gave her a bottle of medicine. "Just put the medicine in the juice and give it to Cris to drink. After 5 minutes, he will fall asleep. At that time, the police will rush in to arrest him." But what Callie did not expect was that every police action was soon monitored by another terrorist organization.
It turned out that the leader of the terrorist organization had secretly smuggled a nuclear bomb into America and could detonate it successfully. He had always been quietly investigating Callie's whereabouts. He also discovered that Callie was working hard looking for someone with the ability to see the future, namely Cris. Although Cris couldn't believe such absurdity, to be absolutely careful, the terrorist leader still sent a group of assassins to follow the police, preparing to eliminate this potential danger. But what Callie did not expect was she underestimated a woman in love. When Liz returned to the motel in a confused and worried mood and secretly put medicine in a glass of juice, suddenly Cris gently hugged her from behind, causing her weak defensive wall to completely collapse. "Don't drink that glass. I've already put drugs in it. Oh God, I don't know what I'm doing. Really don't know what I'm doing." Liz told Cris everything about Callie finding her. After listening, Cris just remained silent, quietly turning on the TV to make noise to avoid being eavesdropped. Then he changed to a glass of fruit juice without drugs, naturally opened the window and walked out to the balcony and pretended to accidentally drink that glass of juice. "This might buy you some time. Spend 5 minutes safely." He then immediately went back into the room and completely confessed to Liz about his predictive ability. "Oh my God, you're really delusional." Cris understands that if it were anyone else, he would be considered crazy, so he decided to demonstrate to the kids on the spot. Fluffy blueberry pancakes or a whole bunch of chocolate brownies are fine. Safe? Only God knows where safety lies. He knew someone who had witnessed his wife's sudden death. "How did you do that?" "I don't know how to do it either, but what he can do is his innate ability." Although it sounds unbelievable, the expression on Chris's face made Liz unable to disbelieve. In order not to drag her into a dangerous spiral, Cris told Liz to wait exactly 45 seconds and then follow the instructions on the paper. He himself immediately left the room to distract the police. Callie, who was monitoring the motel, saw that scene and immediately felt something was wrong. But Cris jumped down and ran straight down the mountainside. Police disguised as construction workers entered, and Callie immediately gave chase. Just as Cris was running along the route he had planned in his head, he suddenly saw a prediction of the sniper's appearance. He started a car, then quickly jumped out of the driver's seat. Because of negligence, the car crashed into the water tower in front, causing a spill that caused the pile of equipment above to slide down the slope. The sliding debris blocked most of the pursuing police force. After accurately avoiding the out-of-control car, Cris finally managed to escape to the small road. But he didn't expect that Callie was already waiting in the place he was sure to pass. At that moment, the equipment lost control and collapsed a large pile of wood. Faced with the rolling pile of wood, Callie suddenly retracted her gun.
"Looks like he's ready to sacrifice himself. You will look at me and not save me." But Chris's rare confidence was ultimately not appreciated by Callie. On the contrary, he was still in a closed room. He was forced to use a device to hold his eyes open and forced to watch news on TV to save the lives of millions of people in the city. Callie forced Cris to use his precognitive powers to find out where the nuclear warhead is located. When faced with a robber who shot all the gang, Cris could immediately deduce all possible outcomes for himself. Your future has only one path. And the FBI people, in order to find the location of the nuclear warhead, locked Cris in a closed room and forced him to open his eyes with a device, just to make him observe the news being broadcast on television. They made him predict the location of the nuclear warhead. But Cris was not unwilling to help. Faced with that situation, Cris was forced to try to overcome his limits to see further into the future. Unexpectedly, in future news, he saw his lover again. An urgent news report said she was tied up with bombs tied to her body by terrorists. The location is the parking lot. The time is 6 p.m. As the bomb squad prepared to rush in to rescue, Cris woke up after seeing the future, trying to suppress his emotions. 6 p.m. today, Liz, my lover, will be blown to pieces. That is a future he absolutely cannot accept. So Cris finally agreed to cooperate with the police. He and Callie went to the parking lot where the explosion will occur in the future. Start using your predictive power to track down the source. Finally, he saw the license plate of the terrorist organization. Immediately afterwards, the police followed the license plate to find information and quickly found the main base of the terrorist organization. This caused the terrorists who were preparing to go to the parking lot to be suddenly attacked. They couldn't carry it out in time. The two sides immediately fell into a fierce gun battle. Thanks to Chris's prophetic abilities, every hidden terrorist was exposed. Take out the guy on the bridge in the northeast corner. The leader of the terrorist organization had Liz under control and took her inside the ship compartment. Cris also immediately followed under the protection of fully equipped soldiers. Under the guidance of the power of prediction, even though the terrorists installed C4 and light sensors in the corners of the door, Cris still knew each one in time.
Just as Cris had just stepped around the corner, he was suddenly hit by a bullet in his chest. Luckily, it was just an image he foresaw in the future. Thanks to that, the special forces promptly received a warning and quickly destroyed the hidden sniper. It's said to be the ability to predict, but actually Chris's ability is like rehearsing the future. It was like he split into countless copies, directly experiencing each different future. Just in front of his eyes, Cris clearly understood all the passages inside the ship compartment. Finally, in a possible future, he found traces of Liz. When Cris and Callie cornered the leader of the terrorist organization, he still stubbornly tried to fight back. But with Chris's game-changing prediction ability, he was eventually shot down by Callie. However, when they opened the container which was originally intended to store nuclear warheads, it was completely empty inside. Obviously, the nuclear warhead had been transferred before. Cris looked at the satellite map of the city on the computer screen. Suddenly, he realized he seemed to have missed out on a fatal detail. At that moment, the nuclear bomb exploded a few kilometers away. Cris opened his eyes and realized he was still lying on the bed in the small hotel.
It turned out that everything that had just happened was just a scenario that he had seen before. Just like Liz's existence, Chris's predictive ability was strongly enhanced, completely breaking previous limits. Now, he can see the future up to 24 hours later instead of just